Good evening, one and all Dice Tower friends. Mike DiLisio tonight on the Daily Chat. Welcome to everybody, and I am especially excited. I'm always excited to talk to friends in the Daily Chat, but I'm especially excited today because I have a very special guest, someone who we were talking just a moment ago before we came live. We've not met in person, but we've interacted quite a bit online. This is Shem Phillips from Garphill Games. Shem, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on the Dice Tower Daily Chat.
Hey Mike, it's so good to be here.
It's it's weird. It's not weird, I guess, because our physical proximity is so far away. But we've just chatted online, just kind of informally so many times over the years that I almost feel like I have met you, but I haven't. So I don't even know if we've done video chatting before. Actually, have we?
No, not at all.
Yeah, it's
quite
crazy.
strange.
It really is, but I'm thrilled to have you here, and I'm glad we have an excuse to do this video chat. So if anybody maybe is not aware, do you mind giving just a little introduction of who you are and what you do, Shem?
Yeah, sure. So I'm kind of like the guy behind Garphill Games, I guess. So the North Sea series, the West Kingdom series, and a few other games we've done. I'm the main guy behind it. I also co-design a lot with Sam McDonald, or SJ McDonald, as you see him on the boxes. And we're just pretty much a very small publishing company out of New Zealand that have managed to make a bit of a splash thanks to Kickstarter and then picking up a partnership with Renegade and other publishers around the world.
Yeah, and I appreciate the modesty, but right now, am I correct that you have 3 games in the top 100 on BGG right now?
Yeah, that's pretty surreal for us.
I mean, that is amazing to me. I mean, you are a small operation, right? I mean, do you have other full-time employees, or is it really you and Sam, or?
So Sam's not actually even employed. He's a contractor.
Okay.
Just because it's just better for his lifestyle. But I have myself, my wife, and my brother, who does a lot of artwork now for Sathya and Circadians. He's employed as well. So 3 of us technically, but Sam is the other Sam. I've got 2 Sams. Sam McDonald is is pretty much an employee in a sense, yeah.
Do you, and this may be getting into more business than you actually want to talk about, but I mean, do you foresee a time when you're going to have to expand your staff, or are you going to try to keep it really tight and in-house?
I think so far we all really enjoy working from home.
Yeah.
And I really like the lifestyle of just, like, I get up whenever I feel like getting up. It could be 6, it could be 5, it could be 8 if I'm lucky. But
right.
roll out of bed, make a hot chocolate, do some work, and then interact with the kids. They go off to school, So the idea of going to an office doesn't excite me at all.
Yeah, I would think that part of the benefit of being in the creative type of job you have is that you've got that luxury. And I noticed it didn't escape me. I noticed you mentioned hot chocolate. Are you a hot chocolate in the morning person? You're not a coffee or tea person at all?
I've never been a coffee or tea person.
Okay.
So yeah, just try and stay away from drugs as much as possible.
Yeah, the caffeine. I guess you can have decaffeinated. My wife drinks decaffeinated coffee generally, but is New Zealand a tea culture?
It's more coffee. There are definitely tea drinkers though. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're quite well known, especially Wellington, which is the closest city that I'm near, the capital. That's known as like a coffee barista type city. They love their coffees. So I've just never got into them. I enjoy coffee cake.
Okay. Hey,
so I'm
with you there. Coffee cake, and you don't need to drink coffee to enjoy coffee cake. So I'm just going to take a quick look through the chat. We have a lot of our regulars here. Hello to everybody. I'm going to see if we can start finding some questions. Shem, I'm notorious for just starting a chat, and then I'm 15 minutes in, and I start looking at questions, and it takes me the rest of the time, and I never can get caught up. So I'm trying to get in on the questions a little bit earlier, but they also have nice chats with themselves. So sometimes it takes me a little while before I get to the first question, but I'm going to see if we can find some here. Oh, well, Nathan Breadfelt says, I'm playing Paladins while waiting to chat with Shem Phillips. So that's fantastic. Yeah, Paladins, man, that game, it still crushes me. It still crushes me. I've gotten to the point where I'm pretty good. I also will very carefully if I'm playing solo. I don't always play solo, but when I do, I try to pick the AI that is tough enough to be a challenge, but I can still beat. Paladins,
Yeah.
man, even on the simplest level, I have a hard time with Paladins.
You got to get those townsfolk combinations working for you.
I
It's a
think
trick.
that's the way it is. Oh, and here's another question. Here's a question from Nathan. Favorite game for you to play of your own creation and of not your creation. So, do you play a lot of your own games outside of playtesting, or?
When we playtest for so long, so
Yeah.
it becomes a fun thing. But I think for the last year it would have been Paladins for sure. It's kind of like my baby because it's the first game that Sam and I 100% co-designed together. But I will say, now that we, spoiler alert, working on an expansion for Viscounts,
Oh,
that's
man.
becoming quite a high favorite now because just I don't know, it's just a really fun game to play. And of other people's games, wow. More recently, games like Underwater Cities have really stood out to me. I always have to look at my shelf if you ask me these
Yeah,
questions.
I do the same thing.
I had a great time playing Journeys of Middle Earth. Played it solo, two-handed. Played it
Okay.
3 times now, so
Wow.
it's a different game for me, but I really enjoy playing games that I wouldn't necessarily design.
Sure.
But as far as Euros go, it's like Great Western Trail, and just so many good games.
There are. I played an early copy of the Tekkenu game, the
Oh, yeah,
David Turtzi and Daniela Tashini. Have you played Teotihuacan or Zolkin?
yeah, play both of those.
Yeah, it's. I'll be interested to see what you think of that. I've enjoyed that.
Cool.
Nick Wagner is a regular Dice Tower chat alum, and he asks, Shem, what character in Raiders of the North Sea do you identify with most in your regular daily life or fantasy life? You have character. Do you have a character that's based off of you?
Yeah, the one that's on the back of the solo deck is meant to
I
be
thought,
me.
yeah. Yeah.
That was done as like an illustration, like a postcard that got put in the Rune Saga box as a special Kickstarter gift.
Right.
But I never used it for anything else. And then when we did the solo, I was like, it may as well be me on the back because you're kind of facing the designer in a way.
Oh yeah, that's a
as
good
far
point.
as- yeah. Other characters. And I love the Berserker, just the energy in that character. That just
Yeah.
and the big beard of the mercenary. He's always good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm not going to try to. I'm just going to call him the Miko because I think that I have less of a chance of butchering the name there. One thing about his art, and not just in your games, but in other games I've seen him do, is he has a way of creating dynamism with his art. I think where they're static images, but they really seem to have kind of like you say, like the Berserker. You can almost feel movement on the card. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I think
And
that's
so,
kind of his biggest talent is just creating really interesting characters that you look at them and you think there's some story behind that character. Like there, yeah, he's such a gifted artist, really.
he really is, and it's obviously it's been cool to see kind of Garphill branching into some other like with your brother doing some of the more recent stuff, but his art is to me kind of it's part it's part and parcel of that whole package of the North Sea trilogy and the West
Yeah.
Kingdom. How did you get connected with Miko?
I originally started searching the DeviantArt website. I think I just searched the word Viking.
Okay.
And just scrolled and scrolled and scrolled, just trying to find an artist that really like jumped out at me. My original kind of brief I was working off was think like Asterix, but a bit more grown up, a bit more gritty. That was what I wanted. So not dark, not fantasy, just
Right.
cartoony, but adult. And I think I actually found someone else first, a Canadian-based artist, and we were kind of I was liking the art style. There's a bit more, I guess, tighter art. It wasn't so sketchy.
Right. Right.
But then I think they were moving house or something, moving country, and they said, "Oh, I can't commit to doing this." So I went to my second one, which was Miko, and then ended up connecting through Facebook as well. And then he I think he pumped out the first 3 characters in about 2 hours, just as a
Wow.
how do these look? And I was just like mind blowing. Started doing the card mock-ups already, and yeah. So
That's
it's
awesome.
been 7 or 8 years now. I think we worked together. So yeah, he's fantastic.
And so I think you may have kindly, is it Micho? Is it that ch sound in it?
As far as I'm aware, it's meant to be pronounced like it's got an H in it. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Micho.
Well, that's good. So I've been mispronouncing it all of this time, but now I'll know better. Rachel Barrett says, "My daughter and I love Noctiluca. Any chance for an expansion?" This is an abstract game. Last year or year before?
Yeah, last year before, I can't quite remember.
Yeah.
Early last year, maybe.
Okay, that sounds about right. Yeah.
I'm not too sure. That's kind of in the hands of Z-Man for an expansion. I know they were originally thinking like maybe they could do a translucent die type thing like Azul did, with
Right.
translucent Joker tiles. But it really comes down for them as a publisher. Is there demand for it? That kind of stuff. So as far as I know, they've been quite happy with the response. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to work on that one.
It's interesting because I would posit that the games that you're most known for are, they're Euro, but they have thematic, some pretty heavy thematic elements to them, and Micho's art is a part of that, I would say, at least. But you've also done some pretty straight, abstracts with, like even this one that's on Kickstarter right now, a Shelfie Stacker is. I mean, would you say that that's at heart an abstract style game with theme, of course, but it's dice placement and I would say abstract in the same way that something like Sagrada would be. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, I mean, I'm a maths nerd when I grew up, so I enjoy abstract games. Like using sequence of numbers and colors and patterns. That just appeals to me. I enjoy Sudokus and those kind of puzzles. So I think when I was first started Garphill Games, I did lots of games that I just wanted to make. So I did a lot of card games, family games, all sorts. And then with Kickstarter coming to New Zealand, that's when I started to do Shipwrights, and that kind of launched, I guess, a more consistent brand that Garphill was now to become. So a lot of the games that I still like to design, which are abstracts predominantly, don't fit that brand. So Noctiluca was kind of the first one that I went to another publisher, and then Shelfie kind of follows that trend. So I haven't got anything in the works currently, but who knows? There may be more kind of lighter family style games in the future.
Did I hear that you actually prefer designing abstract games, or you just prefer them, or you just enjoy doing them as well as? Like, do you actually have a preference for designing?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. As well as. Okay.
Well, I think one thing as a designer is like you get a lot more fulfillment out of them faster, because as selfish as it sounds, but because they're easier to design to a degree. They're harder to maybe think up an initial concept, but once they start developing, it just kind of works. Whereas a heavier, medium weight to heavy Euro, like the concept's still difficult, and then there's just all this interweaving things you've got to sort of develop over the course of months. So it's still fun, but it's a much bigger job to produce a game like that.
I can imagine. Yeah, you have the interlocking mechanisms and the well, especially. I mean, I'm thinking of something like Paladins, where you've got the interconnected tracks, really, that one depends upon the other, and getting the balance right on that must have been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. I think we were probably 2 or 3 months into development before we even figured that out. So
is that right?
It shows. Yeah, it takes a long time to really get something like that working. Well, for us at least.
And that was your first co-design with Sam, right? Paladins. How did that project kind of come to being? I mean, had you already been talking about working on something together? Was it already going to be planned as the first of a new trilogy? Kind of how did that start?
So after the North Sea kind of finished up, obviously had the thoughts, why not go west or south or east? And I actually started playing around with ideas of doing like a South Pacific or a Wild West, like just changing time periods, changing art styles. So I tried doing that. Things weren't really panning out how I thought they might. And then Sam, who's a good friend of mine for the last 5 years at that point, just said, I don't want to step on your toes, but I've got this idea for a game. And so I went to his place. We played this very rough whiteboard prototype, which had the core mechanism of architects, where you're placing workers to sew and investing them into spots to make the spots better. People can capture them. put them in prison. So that the very core of architects was there. And then over the course of a few months, we tried to retweak some of the theme. We tried to like see if it could fit in a different time period potentially.
Right.
But in the end, it was like, this feels like you are building buildings. It's as generic as you get for Euro games.
Right.
But it seemed to work. So we just decided this will be the West Kingdom. This will be France. And then obviously, as it's from the North Sea, I thought, well, let's just make another trilogy, of course. So
right.
Yeah.
Well, and you caught me there too, because for me this is the end of the day. It's 9 p.m. You're in the future. You're actually you're Tuesday. It's around afternoon, and I was saying Paladins, and I was meaning Architects, of course, as the first game in the West Kingdom. Paladins, being a follow up, and so this kind of relates here. Dead Squirrel asks, what made you take the approach of making trilogies? Was this something that was thoughtful, or is it just something that has kind of happened and now it's become part of the brand to an extent?
I definitely had no intention of doing it when I designed Shipwrights. That was purely a response to like feedback from backers on Kickstarter saying that they liked the idea of building ships. That was cool. They liked the theme, the art, but they thought, why can't you fight with these ships? Why can't you raid or whatever, as
Right.
Vikings do? So that's what sparked the idea of maybe I should do a game called Raiders of the North Sea. And then as I started working on that, and as I started seeing the game kind of develop, I just thought, well, a trilogy is better than just 2 games. So at that point, I had that in mind to maybe do a 3rd game as well. Just follow the story of the Vikings. And then it's, more from a business point of view and just about building a brand, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It just made sense to, like I said earlier, I considered changing all the stuff, doing like a different time period, different artwork,
Right.
but it made sense. People were still enjoying it, and I'm so glad we did with now that we can do crossover between the games, like you've seen
Right.
the Vikings come out in Paladins and stuff. So it just helps build this bigger universe.
Well, and you've been able to do kind of the Rune Saga and now the upcoming Tome Saga, right?
Yep.
Which is also kind of cool that you wouldn't have been able to do that at least quite so seamlessly without having it in that kind of format. Do you remember what the genesis of the idea of the worker placement in Raiders was with the place one, take one? Had that been something you'd experienced before, or because I don't think I had played a game that had that approach to worker placement before Raiders.
No, I think Coldwater Crown came out within a month of Raiders, and that has a similar mechanism. So
Sure.
the idea of, I think, I don't know what it's called, but it's where people have the same ideas developing at the same time.
Yeah, there's a phrase for it.
Yeah, other than those two, I think that's, as far as I know, those are the two that do it. But I think Raiders was the unique one for me because I am more mechanics driven kind of person. So with Raiders, I was like, well, it's going to be called Raiders. You probably have crew, they probably die. What else? So I went through about 7 or 8 different versions of what Raiders could be. And I think early on, I had in my mind, maybe I should do a worker placement because I've been enjoying Stone Age and Pillars of the Earth and all sorts of games like that.
Right.
And I think I originally had like a village where you would go and get berries and then go and get this and go and get that. More like what Waterdeep does in a way, just collecting resources and then cashing them in.
Right.
And then I think a friend of mine who's playtesting just said, I feel like I want to just get the stuff, go out there and then grab all this loot. Like that was the kind of the feeling they wanted.
Right, right.
And that's when I decided, let's not put all these resources down the bottom. Let's put them out on the board and you rush out to grab them. And then I think also during that process, trying to make the game more unique, I just thought, hey, what else can you do with these workers? Maybe you pick them up rather than put them down or something like that. And that kind of led into the idea of there's these 8 locations, there's always 3 workers, you put one down, you pick one up. And I think I had different things at some point where there was different actions for if you placed or picked. The actions varied.
Oh, I see.
But in the end, it seemed more streamlined just to be like they're the same regardless of what you do. It's all about the order and can you do both things.
Yeah, and so between that, the place one, pull one, and having the different types of workers that either could potentially, you can't go to that spot if you don't have that type of a worker, and definitely those raiding spots, or even in the main area where you won't get as good of a reward at the silversmith if you, is that the right name of the spot? I'm trying to do it from memory.
Yep.
Yeah, if you've got the white or a gray worker, which you think of, oh, this is a better worker, but not necessarily there. I just, those two little twists, I think, were what got my attention at first. And, then playing it, it's still something I enjoy playing. I'm saying this, I'll say it to anybody, not just to you while you're sitting in front of me. The expansions have certainly helped that too, and kept that fresh. So it must be difficult with something like deck building or worker placement, where there's so many gamers have a frame of reference, right? They have certain things that they expect to kind of play with those a little bit. And so I haven't had a chance to play Viscounts yet. Did you do anything kind of different with the deck building mechanic? I mean, how did you approach deck building as a mechanic?
So I think I'd had in my mind for about 2 years, and I told Sam that I don't like many deck building games. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of my drive for that game was I want to make a deck builder that I like.
Okay.
And I think my biggest grief with a lot of them is that all the points are usually hidden. Not all of them, but often.
Yeah.
Like Dominion is an example. And then you kind of play your game, and at the end of the game, everyone reveals what they've got, and, oh, well, you won. Well done. Like, there's no big crescendo
Right.
or, like, tension of who's winning.
Right.
So that was kind of like what I pitched to Sam, and then he came up with the idea of a floating tableau of cards. So rather than playing your 5 cards and draw 5 more, you have 3 cards, you play one, take your turn as a bunch of things happen, and then you draw up, next turn you slide that one across and play another one down, and then same thing. Eventually you get a tableau of 3 that kind of just float off your board. Mm-hmm. And some have instant effects, some have ongoing effects, and some have drop-off effects.
Okay.
So it kind of blends deck building with tableau building. And then you've got the kind of circular rondel movement happening on the main board, and a bunch of other things thrown in. So it's very much a smorgasbord, but we did tons of things to really make everything integrate. So making hopefully for a very fun experience.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Meeple University, I'm assuming this is Stella, although it could be Taryn or could be both. Says Raiders of Scythia is so good. And I co-sign that. I very much enjoy that. What was your motivation for going that route? Kind of taking, and maybe if you wouldn't mind, just taking a moment to explain what Raiders of Scythia is. It's not out quite yet, but what it is and why you decided to go in that direction.
Yeah, so I think I was just sitting right here, looking at my shelf, and I saw like my 4 or 5 versions of Pandemic on the shelf, and just thought, I was thinking about, future projects, what we can do. And I was thinking, Raiders will be 5 years old this year, which seems bizarre because people were still learning it and get into it.
Right.
But for me, it's very old. So that kind of gave me thought, well, maybe I should put a different spin on it. Maybe, different art style, and just really revisit it with these 5 years of experience I've now had with development.
Right.
And see what I would change in the game now. So for those who don't know anything about it, it's built on the same mechanisms. You place a worker, picking up a worker, but it's now set about 2,000 years earlier almost. And you are the Scythians who are raiding Greece and Persia and Assyria and Cimmeria. And you're still getting a crew, but the big things that change is that there's no Valkyrie, because as far as I know, the Scythians didn't actually want to die. They would rather win the battle.
Right.
They were very brutal, very vicious, but they wanted to live. And I removed the armor track, and that was then supplemented by having animals that you can attach to your crew. So you can have horses which attach to each crew, which work a bit like a variable armor track. So you get to choose strength versus points, how you build your horses, and then the eagles, which can go at the top of the crew, can either double the crew effect. So if they would usually get 1 point when raiding Assyria, they now get 2 points, so it doubles it. Or they can, it's kind of like we did with, it was inspired much by Architects, with the certain characters that changed the actions you can take at the King's Storehouse, like the merchants and the traders. So these eagles can attach to your crew so that you can trigger their play abilities at a certain location. So a little bit of engine building going on. Or there's another third one, which is like a generic kind of points and strength. And aside from that, there's more dice rolling, so it kind of adds a bit more of that risk and fun that a lot of people wanted in Raiders. So I think a lot of things are added we're kind of listening to what people who maybe didn't quite click on the original Raiders for them, what they might want in the game. And it's also a faster game for lower player counts because we removed some of the raid spots, and just really, I took more time to kind of streamline. So you'll notice that the end game is much smoother than just is there this thing done, this thing done. It's just now there's really only one or two kind of conditions. It's a lot cleaner.
Yeah, no, it's difficult because I have a soft spot in my heart for Raiders in the North Sea. But I've been telling people that have been asking that if you're going to get just a base game, Sathya is the way to go, because it takes some of the things that I really enjoy about the expansions and kind of sneaks them in there through some of these mechanics you've been talking about. And it's just, for a base game, it's, to me, the way to go. Yeah, I'm excited for people to get a chance to play that. Do you know when that's being released widespread?
Hopefully round about September-ish. We'll see.
Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. The Mr. E asks, how do you get the courage to jump into the game designer / publisher game with such force? And so to many of us, it may feel like Garphill kind of exploded onto the scene, but you may have a very different experience. How long have you been kind of working at this? And I guess Mr. E's question, how did you get the courage to jump into it?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's just perception of where I've been. So I've been doing this for, I think it's 12 years now. So I started out, I would have been early 20s, and I had a little family-style roller move game that I wanted to make. So I set out to make it. I had no idea of the board game community that we now are a part of. Didn't know anything about modern board gaming. So made this game, and just kind of made like a kit set. So I'd buy it, like the dice from here and the cards from here, and then I'd assemble them myself. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years. So I bought a little die cutter so I could cut my own cards, which is where the funky shape for our cards comes from, by the way.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it was easy to make prototypes with that card size.
Wow.
But yeah, so I think I probably made about 7 or 8 games before Shipwrights that people don't know about, because they were mainly locally made. I was very lucky if I ever sold more than 100 copies. So I had a few people, in the States and around Europe that still got my games, but it was predominantly in New Zealand.
Right.
And then that's where I kind of started. And I guess for me, from a designer point of view, and I guess as a publisher, I learned a lot in those 6 years. So Shipwrights was not like my first little baby that I tried to launch on Kickstarter. And it's by no means a perfect game either, but I've learned a lot since then. But I think I had six years of kind of figuring out what I like in games, and how to create a product and that kind of stuff, and a little bit about shipping and marketing.
Sure. Just since you mentioned Shipwrights briefly, there was a question earlier from Nathan Bredfeld asking, do you ever think about remaking Shipwrights the way you did Raiders? Is this something that you've ever kind of thought you might come back to at some point?
Yeah, it's definitely crossed my mind. Can you just release a new deck of cards that replaces the original deck and it still play with the components? So it's I don't know if I'll ever do it, but it's something I've definitely considered. But I think my focus is more on like what's the next game. So like revisiting an old game is not something I'd often do. Next year we're planning to really focus on West Kingdom and do expansion. So we're not just going to jump into like the next trilogy. We want to give it some space. So we're not trying to move too fast. But yeah, maybe, who knows? I think Raiders got the treatment because it was so well received anyway. It was already a top 100 game and had the Kennerspiel nomination and was then 5 years old. So I knew there would be people who would be excited about like a re-release. Yeah. Right.
And there's going to be another large box. You did a Kickstarter for kind of a collector's box for Raiders, and I believe that now Renegade's putting out one as well, right?
Yeah, so we definitely waited on that because the original box was meant to be Kickstarter exclusive. So that was like the big important thing is I don't want to break that trust or break that promise to the Kickstarter backers. So the big thing was there's no wooden provisions in the box, but they wanted to add something else. So we agreed on sleeves was fine.
Sure.
So that new box is just Renegade, and has it has enough sleeves to have all the townsfolk cards sleeved. I think it's got the same insert inside it, different art style.
Okay.
But I've now done 2 print runs of our box, and we've almost sold out. I think we have sold out now, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
So we're not going to be reprinting it. So if you don't have it, Renegade are the ones to go to get the new box from.
Got it. Yeah, it's and I do like the new art on I like them both actually. I think they're both fantastic pieces of art.
Yeah, I'm getting the.
Oh, go ahead.
puzzle.
Sorry.
I'm getting the puzzle that's got the new artwork on it. They Kickstarter currently.
That's right. I heard about that. Yeah, that looks pretty nice. Fred Perro says, Shem, solo gamers appreciate our inclusion in your games and how well they operate. Are you inspired by any other solo games?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that. Yeah, I think now I do a bit of solo gaming.
Mm-hmm.
I do the old look around the shelf thing again. I think if a game has a solo mode, I'll usually try it because it's a good way to learn a game.
Sure.
There's some that I won't mention names, but there's some games that don't have. They're more like a variant, a solo variant. I don't often play those because I want to learn the game so I can teach my friends. So often I'll just play a game two-handed to learn it. But as far as being inspired by, I'm not too sure. To be honest, with Architects, that was Sam. He was like, I want to make a solo mode because he wanted to be able to play test the game faster. That was his main drive for it. And then when that worked and I saw what he had done, I was like, hey, I could do something like that for Raiders. That'd be easy, like a few cards. So I spent a few months developing the Raiders one. And then I think now, moving forward, our mindset is like, if we can put solo in the box, we'll put solo in the box. And for us as developers, we've found it to be like one of the most useful tools for balancing games. Because, I mean, working on a Paladins expansion, I played 4 games of it last week, solo. I noticed things that would take me, weeks to notice if we're trying to meet up and play 2 to 4 player games. So solo is really good for play testing as well.
Yeah, and obviously I have a background in that, and I also just think that it widens your, just from a business perspective, it widens your potential market base so much. I mean, I think publishers and designers, but to a larger extent publishers have come to the realization that that's a pretty substantial market share in this hobby. And so what I do like, though, is that it's not just we're going to throw a solo variant in there. Like you said, that still happens. Don't get me wrong. But more and more, it seems like there's an expectation that it's going to actually be a viable one that presents something that's similar to the multiplayer experience. And that's what I've enjoyed about others, but also the Garphill solo experiences. They've been pretty spectacular. I've been on record with that. So Andrew Grant asks, are there plans for multiple games in the Sathya universe?
No. So I don't want to expand the game. I want the game just to be completely as it is. But you can expect more games with a similar design treatment. Not saying they're remakes, just we've got another game coming out next year called Hadrian's Wall, and so the aesthetics of the game will feel very similar. But it won't be part of a trilogy or a series or anything. Completely different time zones, all that kind of stuff.
Interesting. Okay, Hadrian's Wall. I'm intrigued.
It's a kind of medium to heavyweight pen and paper cards game for 1 to 6 players. It plays in about an hour, so it's like a crunchy brain burn. Will give a similar vibe to Paladins, I guess.
Really?
Not designed by me either. Designed by Bobby Hill. So I'm a Kiwi designer.
Fantastic. Joe Don Richardson asks, are you planning any more games in the Circadians universe? Which also was not a design by you, correct? That was that was just Sam, correct?
That's Sam, yep. So Sam has now got a co-designer called Zach, who's Kiwi but living in Italy. So they've been co-designing the second game a lot through Tabletopia. We actually play tested it yesterday just at my place, 2-player. It's pretty cool. It's very much a dudes on a map area control game, but with Sam's amazing design for engine building and asymmetry he loves in games. So there's 6 factions, all very different. It's a 2 to 5 currently, but I think Sam will probably challenge himself to make a solo mode if he can.
Right. Right.
But it's really cool game. That'll probably
And
be released next year.
fantastic. And same, in the same kind of universe, the same art style and everything else.
Yeah, so players, same art style, same thing, but the players will play as one of either the 3 aliens that we had, or as the Cicadians, or the AI as a faction, or have a new alien race as well. So you're playing as one of those 6 factions.
Interesting. Okay. All right. See, I'm liking some of this new information. More things for me to get excited about because, goodness knows, I already. I'm a little look. I said this before when I talked to Jamie Stegmeyer on the Daily Chat not too long ago. You can't love every game by every designer, but I do think that some designers oftentimes have aesthetic is the wrong word, but have a design philosophy. You know what I mean? The design philosophy that tends to fit with you, and not just you, but even Sam's games too, just tend to work for me. I tend to enjoy them, and so I'm unashamedly excited to see what you all have coming down the pike here. All right, so I'm looking. I'm trying to be better, Shem. I'm trying to make sure I go a little bit more quickly. This is an interesting one. Sorrow Song asks, Shem, could we get a co-design from you with Tom Lehman? I feel like the two of you would mesh really well with how you use mechanisms. I'm trying to think of like a mesh between something like Race for the Galaxy and Architects, or I don't know. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. It's funny with co-designing because you get that question now and then, like, who's your dream person to co-design with? And I don't know. For me, it's more about the relationship you have with the person that actually helps. So Sam and I have known each other for 5 or 6 years before we even started designing together. So we already knew that we worked well together. We played in a band and stuff. So we'd been creative together. Whereas I think with anyone else, you'd have to know the person to actually know, can we actually work together? But who knows? If a publisher like someone like Tom or someone else approached me and said, I've got this game, I would definitely look at it. So but it'd be probably more a case of publishing it rather than actually co-designing. Who knows?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting to, sometimes you think about a designer and kind of just what I was talking about, these design philosophies, but you wonder if maybe the alchemy would be different. You know what I mean? If you had two people with, would they still be coming with the same, or would it be a mixture of the two? Would one kind of, would it be a battle of wills? I don't know. I mean, it's always interesting when you see co-designs by designers that are pretty well established. Like, say, for example, some of the French designers like Antoine Bauza and Bruno Catala. When you see some of their co-designs, I personally, when I'm playing them, I'll be thinking, okay, which aspects of this game came from Bauza? You know what I mean? So I don't. Have you ever? I
think
done
those
that?
guys. I think especially with Bauza, because he has his like design group. I watched the video where he's got a working workspace where everyone comes and hangs out and designs together or designs separately. So I think those guys especially have a really great community. So they become great friends, and then they just go, hey, I've got this idea, and they spitball and then make a game together. Whereas just trying to pitch the idea of designing with someone you don't even know is like
and that makes thing. Yeah, that makes sense. Like you said, they already have personal relationships, and I would think almost with any creative process, you also mentioned that you are a musician. I would imagine to be the same thing with musicians. I mean, you probably are going to create better with people that you have a personal relationship or connection with, or at least maybe more quickly. I'm assuming you could build something over time, but maybe it would take some time to get going.
Yeah, and even those tastes of music comes into it as well. So if you don't have the same taste, so like you were saying, like, do their philosophies for design line up? Which I think Sam and I definitely do. We always have the same, like, we want the same thing at the end of the process. It's just that Sam wants to add more and I want to pull stuff out. That's our balance that we always have.
Nice. Well, yeah, it's good to have that push and pull. Stick H asks, what has been the most challenging design for you?
Definitely Viscounts. That was so challenging. So, for example, Architects, it stands on some very, like, what's the word? Kind of things that have been done before that we know work. So not tropes, but in a way for processes. Paladins was a very tight system, so it's actually quite hard to plug things into Paladins because it's all really tight. Viscounts, on the hand, was like wide open. Like there's so much you could do, and it was the hardest game to balance because there's 3 very distinct paths, and you can kind of do a blend of them as you please. But there's the castle, there's the buildings, and there's the clerics, and they're wildly different. But not only like just say testing that path, you actually need to test like that path plus evil, that path plus good, that path plus this deck of cards, that deck. There's so many variables that we got to the point after like months of development going, I think it's as good as we can get it. Because it's like there's so much variation that you could never really pinpick why someone did better in that game or why they won. Or we definitely know that the things are balanced as far as the maths. Sure. But there's so many ways that you could play a game, same strat but slightly different card set or different path, slightly different path you took, that would determine if you won or not. So yeah, it was a huge challenge, and the AIs were a massive challenge, but a lot of fun.
And you said you're already working on the expansion for that. Did I hear that correctly, or?
Yeah, so we started working on Sam started working on a Paladins one first, and then we had some ideas for an Architects one, and then we just thought, why not next year? The Viscounts one wouldn't be till like later next year. It would be either the second or the last one that comes out. So it's a long way off, but we're now sort of our playtest days currently are like, which of the expansions do we work on?
Right.
So, yeah. Wow. But Viscounts has been a lot of fun because it just adds a little bit more stuff to it that we really enjoy.
Fantastic. I am definitely looking forward to that. Nick, we've had a lot of questions from Nick, but these are good questions. Shem, are there any New Zealand mythological, lesser-known subjects, characters, or stories that you feel could make a strong impact in the board game hobby?
There's definitely a lot of culture and the Māori culture. With there's like taniwha, which are like kind of like dragon-ish kind of sea monsters, and many kind of what's the term? Like stories within the Māori culture that you could do, but you got to be really careful, especially being a white guy in New Zealand.
Sure.
This is a colonized country, so me doing anything in Māori culture is not really acceptable. I personally wouldn't do it.
Right.
But if there's, I know there are because I know them, but there are some Māori designers coming through our playtest groups. So I'm really excited to see what they do because it'd be exciting. It's unique. You've seen things like Moana on Disney.
Sure.
That's more Polynesian, but very similar in a lot of ways. So I think it'd be exciting to see because we've seen a lot of bad games with trying to use the New Zealand theme. And it just comes off as really poor development. But I'm excited to see some games come out in the future that actually do it really well. But who knows? Hopefully I could help in development, but yeah.
That'd be great. I'm going to do my best with this name. Ephraim maybe? Owen Maza asks, Hi Shem, I haven't played any of your games. Which of your games would you recommend the most, not luck heavy, for a heavy Euro gamer? Wow.
So for heavy, I'd say probably Paladins or Circadians, and then Viscounts when it comes out. I think Raiders is probably quite low on luck. Architecture is very low on luck. It's a lot more interaction. So if you really like Euros with a lot of play interaction, I'd go Architects. But you probably want to add in the expansion to add a bit more weight. If you don't like interaction, you prefer kind of doing your thing, I'd say try Paladins.
Yeah, I think that would if someone were asking me, I think I would be giving a similar recommendation for that. Nathan says, Shem, thank you for putting the Raiders solo mode into an app. I thought I could never play Raiders. You had a small physical deck of cards that was only coming out of the Garphill store in New Zealand, correct? But you made just a small print run of those, and then it sold out. Am I right?
Yeah, we printed about 3,000, but they took like 3 years to sell. So
Okay.
a lot of people started. I think it was after your video, actually, thanks to you. A lot of people started asking about it, but at that point, I was like, well, we aren't seeing the sales. We need to do a reprint. But what else can I do? And
Sure.
personally, I try and avoid print and plays if I can, because it's just not what I want to do with our brand.
Right.
But I have a local friend who does development with digital stuff. So I was like, hang on, maybe we could do a like a digital version of it. It's not going to be that hard. It's a flipping cards. And I thought it'd be really, dry, boring looking thing where you're flicking cards. But then Paul, who did all the work on it, added all this animation and sound effects and stuff. So it looks amazing. But that was just really to say, like, how can we expand our brand? Can we get into digital a little bit and make a bit of a splash there? So you can also expect, probably in a month or two, we're going to release a scoring app. So all our games.
Oh, fantastic!
So you can choose your character profile, like which character you're playing, put your name in, and go through the scoring little calculator thing. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's and I think especially for something like Paladins, it would that would save you a little bit of the
point salad game.
Yep, exactly. We've got Ian O'Toole in the chat saying, "Hey, Mike and Shem." Hey, Ian. Always lovely to see you. Yeah, I mean, I would not mind seeing a collaboration there. I'm just gonna say nothing against Micho or Sam, but that would be another nice collaboration. That would be pretty fantastic. This is an interesting question. Bonzoso21. What's your go-to game when you only have 45 minutes or 2 hours or all day? So kind of like what's your go-to short game, 2 hour-ish game, and epic game if you play those?
Just off the top of my head, if I had 45 minutes, it'd probably something like Azul, Downforce, Tiny Towns, something like that. Bigger games, I'll want to play something that's going to burn my brain a little, like Great Western Trail, Underwater Cities, or even Scythe. I haven't played that in a while, but Scythe's always great. And then if I want just some fun, crazy dice chucking, then I'll go to something else more American.
Right. Let's see here. Clark Bender, what other designers currently inspire you or make you jealous? Depending on maybe both, I don't know.
Yeah. Alexander Pfister is fantastic. Love his work. Kramer, Kiesling kind of group, the German guys, so talented. The games where I'm like, I play them, I go, I wish I had designed this. I wish I could publish this.
Right.
I think Role Player is a big one. I love Role Player.
Wow. Okay.
And really admire what Keith's doing with his brand as well. So
yeah.
Probably anything that he published, you'd almost see me publishing. I just love his stuff. Underwater Cities was one of those ones where I was like, I wish I designed this, because I've played Asara years ago.
Yeah.
Which I think is Kiesling Kramer. I think.
I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. I could be saying that wrong, but that game does like a flip and worker placement where it's your workers are now cards and they're coloured, and when you play down a card, you then basically say all cards at this location have to be this colour from now on. Kind of like Keyflower does the same thing.
Right.
But then I always loved that. I was like, coloured cards for workers. One day I'll do that, and then Underwater Cities comes out and does exactly what I was kind of thinking it might do. So
right. Yeah, Vladimir Suchi is a really, really very talented designer, and I feel like I remember Last Will I love and what was the ship game? I can't think of the name of it, and I won't be able to think of the name
Space
of it.
One, Pulsar, you mean? Or
no, although I like that too. I can't remember what it's called. Something with ships, but for some reason I can't for the life of me remember it. But I feel like he's a designer that's starting to become more well known. Certainly with Underwater Cities and so yeah, I like that game quite a bit as well. Andy Hutton, you already mentioned a few moments ago, although time is flying here, that you're not a huge deck building game fan, and so that was kind of maybe one of the impetus to doing your own. Andy asks, are there any game mechanisms that you would never do, or new game mechanisms that you are working on?
I think it's very hard to say never, because things like player elimination or dice rolling for movement are always like very taboo. But then you see something like Merlin come out, which does dice rolling for movement, and it works. So there's always a way around it. It's hard to say. I mean, for Garphill Games as it is, I think you'll continue to see medium to heavyweight Euros that will predominantly probably be victory point based games, especially in the Trilogy series.
Right.
Circadians will probably branch out a bit more, so you might see co-ops. Who knows? But as far as mechanisms, it's really hard to say you'd never do it.
Right.
Trying to think. I mean, I'm terrible at area control games, so I generally don't like those kind of games.
Really? Okay.
Despite the new Circadians being one. Just because I'm so bad at them, I always do terribly. So I naturally will not design something like that. But who knows? Maybe one day. I don't know. We'll see.
Ian O'Toole's got my back at Shipyard. Thank you, Ian. I couldn't remember the name of that game for the life of me. But another Suchi game. This is kind of a Sorrow Song asks: Is there a mechanism that you are most looking forward to putting your unique twist on? So, is this something that you necessarily kind of want to be known for? Like, oh, he takes worker placement and puts a twist on it. He takes, or they, if they're co-designs, take deck building and put a twist on it. Is that part of your design philosophy, or has that just been how they've come into being?
I think that's just the way I like to design games.
Okay.
So even early on, I was like, well, I like this kind of thing. How could I put a spin on it? So one of my first card games was called Capek, and it's basically a rummy game, but it's with robots, and you're building the robot parts. So that was me going, oh, how can I make a rummy style game? Because I loved playing those style games when I was a kid. And I think Sebula, which came out a little bit before Shipwrights, that was like a two-player, almost like Lost City style kind of format. And that was just going, oh, how can I like make a two-player game that you can face off against each other, and where the card backs change throughout the game, not just the card faces. So it's usually a mechanical, early on, especially when I was working out what I like in games, was like trying to put twists on things, like the card backs and Shipwrights, the market, stuff like that. So just even if it's very minor, just trying to do something different, because I don't want to keep reinventing the same thing. And I know that from the outside, sometimes people think that all our games look the same, so they must all be the same. But we definitely want to make each game feel very different.
Yeah, that's there's this idea. There's very little. I mean, I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said a million times, but there's very little that's new, right? I mean, almost everything is standing on the shoulders of others who have come before us. But sometimes it can just be little subtle things, little subtle twists that can make all the difference in the world. Andy Hutton again asks, what do you think, or what would you say is the most important characteristic necessary to be a good game designer?
That's a good question. It's a tough one. I think you really have to be quite good at analyzing games and people. So, I mean, early on, I would always take every single bit of advice from people and try and put it in my games.
Sure.
Now, I think it comes with experience, but now you kind of know what they're going to say before they say it, because you can see the expressions and what they're doing. Right. So I think if you're getting into game design like early, like now, I think you should really try and take in every single bit of feedback you can, because there's so much to learn. There's so many things I know now that I didn't know 2 years ago. But yeah, eventually you start to trust your gut a lot more. So I think remaining teachable is always good, remaining humble, not thinking you know everything, because you don't, and just having fun with it. I mean, that's the idea of it, is you're having fun making games. So we try and make games that we want to play, and we're just fortunate that other people enjoy what we enjoy, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic philosophy. I think that's games are about having a good time, and if you are having a good time in the making of it, I think that shows in the production. Bonsoso21 says, what instrument or instruments, plural, do you play? How long have you been playing them, and what's your favorite style of music?
So I played drums when I was a kid, and then broke my arm twice over the course of a year.
Oh man!
That finished that.
Wow.
And we moved away from my teacher. But then I think I tried guitar, just acoustic or classical, when I was like 12, and I just could not handle the chords. My fingers wouldn't do what they should do. And then I was about 14. My mum bought me a bass guitar, so I taught myself to play bass, and I've still been playing it ever since. But in my late teens, got a few guitars, electric guitars, and learnt a bit more lead guitar and stuff. And Sam McDonald plays drums. He's a very creative drummer. So we played in a kind of post-hardcore, post-rock kind of style band. So I enjoy more alternative music, heavier music, but also I like some soft stuff as well. But I guess you put me in that kind of punk / hardcore / metalcore / post-rock / something else kind of genre. I like that kind of stuff.
You're definitely that's my wheelhouse. I don't know if this is just a thing for most people. I mean, I still tend to like the style of music that was like my formative teenage years. And that was, for me, punk rock music. And so I'm still listening to essentially the same type of music. I'm assuming at some point I'm going to get to the point where I no longer want to listen to that type of music, but I'm not there yet. So
I'm still going back to stuff from my
I'm not rushing
years.
to get back there. I'm if I can still cling desperately to some semblance of youth, I'm going to do it. There was something, Sorrow Song here says, Architects is the game that most brought the idea of player interaction as something I could enjoy. I don't like negative interaction in games often, but you did it in such a way that I find fun. And I thought this was an interesting comment because Euro games kind of have this I don't know what the word would be, but they have this label of being indirect player interaction, generally speaking. Maybe you're taking a card someone else might want, or you're going to a spot someone else might want. Architects is a game that has very direct player interaction. You're taking their meeples off the board and you're putting them on yours. But I have never played a game of Architects where people were angry at each other around the table. And I think that's, I really do think that's a difficult thing to pull off. I mean, how did you account for the direct player interaction? It doesn't feel like Take That, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And so how did
Sam
that come about?
That's all Sam's.
Is it?
So that's all Sam's handiwork. I think it's actually really challenging to create new systems of interaction. So a lot of games borrow things. So like worker placement as a generic thing of like Stone Age style worker placement where you put a thing down and you block a spot. Well, even that one doesn't do it too much, but that idea is so easy to use and you could reuse it 100 times and it would work. Whereas I think more unique kind of interactions, like I've played, I think is it called Ragusa? I think there's one, or even some of Martin Wallace's games where it's more about there's a board state like Brass where you're interacting on a board. Those systems are quite hard to create, I think. I guess some designers are better at it, like Martin. But I think I personally tend towards more like what does the player get to do rather than how they interact. So a lot of my games, you probably find they get the multiplayer solitaire label slapped on them. And I'm fine with that because I enjoy those kind of games.
Sure.
But Sam loves interaction. So that's why he's designing like an area control game with Zach. But I think the big thing for Architects, I know that Sam said early on, is he didn't want to have Take That in the game.
Right.
So despite that much intense interaction, he said there should never be a thing where you can steal resources from people or take cards from people. So that was like a big rule for him, so which I liked. But I think the balance with that was some new players, when they play Architects, are like, oh, you took my guys away, that's horrible. Right. But when you play it a few times, you realize, oh, that's kind of part of the economy. They'll put them in prison, you can get them back for free, and then you get guys back. So it's I think the first Dice Tower, I think it was the first video that came out for Dice Tower was saying like, oh, it feels like Take That. But then they said, but it's not really. I think there was some between Z and Tom, I think it was, they were sort of discussing like, it should feel horrible, but it doesn't. It's a
tricky thing to
Sam
pull
did
off.
a great job with that.
I totally agree. It's and just really quickly on this topic, Raiders of the North Sea did have a bit of Take That in there if you chose to go that route. Am I correct that that's been taken out of Sathya? Like I don't remember there being Take That cards in Sathya, and if so, was that a conscious design decision? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, so Shipwrights. When I designed Shipwrights, I'd been playing all sorts of games like citadels and all sorts of games where you can attack each other and stuff. So that was part of my kind of experience of gaming. And then I think after Shipwrights and then Raiders, which had a little bit of take that, and then there's like none in Explorers. It's just more board state interaction.
Right.
I think at that point, and I started playing more Euro games. I think I found that I preferred not to be able to go, well, I've got this card, so ha ha ha. Like that's just not fun. That's just what gives that person the right to do that kind of. It's not exciting. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It doesn't really create the interaction you want. So when I got to do Sathya, there was that conscious decision of going, let's remove the take that cards completely. I think there might be one card where you can still swap a player's worker with a worker from the village, because that actually is quite fun.
Sure.
Because you can stop them from getting to a fortress, so they have to rethink their turn. And yeah, so that's not so much like stealing silver or taking cards. It's just an actual interaction.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, Shem, we've hit our hour, believe it or not. This has flown by. I really have enjoyed chatting with you, and I can tell that the chat has as well. And I would like to thank the chat as always for the fantastic questions for Shem and the great chat they've been having. We've been having some people talking about the Ramones here lately and other stuff, so they kind of take some of the things we talk about and run. But it's been a real pleasure. It's lovely to actually look at you in person while chatting, as opposed to on Facebook or whatever the media may be. So I just wanted to thank you again for agreeing to come on. It really has been a good time.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, Shelfie Stacker is still on Kickstarter. If people want to check that out, if you like Shem's games, you have, I think it's on for another couple of weeks at least. So maybe check that out. You didn't ask me to say that. I'm saying that on my own accord. Anyway, thanks again for coming on, Shem. Thanks again, everybody in the chat, for listening. And we will talk to you later. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.